In this video, we're going to be observing the sign of the times to help us come up with some more clues on what's the best way to monetize your mission, message, and mojo. And by observing the sign of the times, I mean taking a big picture look at what is going on in our world and so you don't end up going into looking for a job or going into an industry, starting a business in an area that's actually evolving out of existence. That you are pointing yourself in the direction of where the evolutionary change and opportunities are. Because remember, your purpose isn't something really specific, it's broad. It is evolving with the times, and on your mission blueprint, there is always a provision for you to be adjusting what it is that you do to fit in with how society is changing and how it's expanding. The law of nature here that we're observing, because I teach the law of nature, as you know from the last mentoring session, is the law of expansion. You're going to be seeing how this law of expansion is working, as well as the law of purpose. Here we're going to cover what are the signs of the times, what is the opportunity, what my predictions have been that have come true, as well as my new predictions, and then the formula for monetization to avoid redundancy. What are your next steps to pull everything together that you've been working on in the mission blueprint formula to then go, aha, yes, this is how I'm going to monetize. So you're aware that the world is changing fast, aren't you? There is a lot of change that has been occurring over the past decades and even in the past years and the past month. Have a look at these visual images. You know, we've got massive unemployment in some areas. The environment is at a crisis point. There is a lot of action going on around the world about injustices, and everybody is like pushing for change. And all of these people and all of these elements are coming together to evolve the change that is occurring on our planet right now. It's all having a domino effect. We have had a prolonged economic crisis, so to speak. Well, that's what the experts are calling it. As you know, I don't call it a crisis. If it's a crisis at all, it's a crisis and a lack of consciousness from our leaders and a lack of leadership because they don't know the signs of the times. You see, the world economy is like, even though it's floundering to get back on its feet in some areas, it is flourishing in other areas. So when you hear statistics like 50% of jobs today gone tomorrow, which is something that's coming out on the news, it's been around for several years now, you know that yes, that's true, 50% of jobs today will be gone tomorrow, but at the same time, there is this huge proliferation of new industries and new jobs and new expansion that's occurring, and I'm going to be going over what those opportunities and what those expansion areas are. So if you're looking for a job, you'll know exactly where to look for a job. You're looking to start a business, you'll know what industry to start a business in. In 2009, I put out a video with my predictions of what was going to be happening over the next few decades, specifically the years. And then in 2010, I put something out about 11-11-11. What was the significance of 11-11-11? And in a nutshell, it's a signpost that evolutionary change is on our doorstep. And I asked the question, are you ready? Do you realize that we're actually shifting ages? We are going from one great age, the age of industry, to the age of information. Now, when we've gone through shifts in ages before, there has been massive upheaval and some people have been caught unawares and therefore ended up in tragedy, and others have prepared and they prosper and they're doing really well. I want you to be the prospering, doing really well, and it's not too late to do the big catch-up. Because what I'm seeing is that we are expanding to where there is going to be this human renaissance. I'll talk a little bit more about that further on in the video. And this means all sorts of new jobs and new opportunities are being born. If you didn't know this prior to now and you didn't prepare yourself and you're not ready, this video is going to help you get ready. It's going to help you orientate your mind to how best to move forward and prosper in these times of change, because they are not going away. They're going to be here for decades, and I'm going to show you why that is in just a moment. So did you know that the world economy is shifting into a new age? Have you been reading what's been going on from the mouths of visionaries like myself, like Arthur Brock, who says today's economy is not a recession, it's the end of an era. This was something he said several years ago when the world went into its second shift in the global economic crisis. So we are at the end of an era. Now, what does that mean? For those of you familiar with my background, you know I started out as a history major and a history teacher, so I'm going to get really passionate, and you'll hear it in my voice in a moment, because we're going to take a little bit of a trip through history for you to get a grasp on what does it actually mean for an era to change, because it's a popular statement that people say, oh yeah, we're shifting eras, it's a new age. But when we're talking about it from a historical perspective of moving from one great era or great age to another great age, that means something a little bit different from when we're using it in popular language and marketing language. So we've had 3 great age shifts or 3 great era shifts in our modern history that we know of that's been recorded in popular modern history. The first one was the natural age to the age of agriculture. So you all are aware that at some stage humanity was nomadic, right? And we moved from place to place to place for food, and we carried the shelter with us and set up at places until there was a revolution called the agricultural revolution that was started by women storing food in the ground, and then they saw that the food sprouted, and that gave rise to the idea that we could cultivate. And in cultivating, animal husbandry was born, and there was all sorts of different explosions and opportunities for humanity to expand its experience. And we lived more sedentary lifestyles, living on plots of land and cultivating, and most of humanity became less nomadic. Well, then we went from the agricultural age to the industrial age, and you probably studied this in school. And that is where, again, started by women who were weaving, and they had a little bit more time on their hands. And so what were we going to do with all of that time on our hands? The loom was invented for them to weave more, and that gave rise to the mechanicalization of the textile industry, which then gave rise to mechanicalizing a lot of things. Mechanizing, excuse me, I don't think mechanicalizing is a word. Mechanizing, and that led to the motor car, that led to industry, and then that led to the industrial age, which we've been living in for the past century. And then came the transistor radio. And the transistor radio, I believe, was a male that invented that one. We can't attribute the next revolution to just women this time. And then we had the microchip, and then we had the birth of the internet, the digital age, and that all has brought us into what we're shifting into now, and that is the information age. So what happens before each age shifts is that you get change precursors. This means that there are indicators in society that change is on its way. That change then becomes a revolution. Then there is upheaval, and then there is a new economy that gets built because of that upheaval and the adjustment to the huge changes that are coming forward. Now let's have a look at how that's looked in history. So when we were in the natural age, nature was the basic component of our economy. We were hunter and gatherers, we lived in tribes, and we lived off the land, and as I said before, we were mainly nomadic. In the agricultural age, with the birth of cultivation, came the birth of kingdoms. Well, who's going to rule over this particular plot of land? Because before, when everything was tribal and there was nomadic, there wasn't this concept of land ownership. So now there's this concept of land ownership. We gave birth to kingdoms, and then there were kings and queens and emperors and empresses, and a monarchy was born to be our form of governance. The components of the economy were land plus labor. So can you see how what's happened is we've now expanded our economy in its components. The economy is not just land, living off the land. It's land plus labor, because somebody had to work everything to do with taking care of the animals and the cultivation and everything that fed into that new way of growing food, housing, all of that kind of thing. And this is where currency began to be born, because it was cumbersome carrying goats around and exchanging goats or blankets or trinkets. So currency came in during the during the agricultural age. So we had expansion again in the industrial age with the age of mechanics, where everything began to be mechanized, and out of that grew governments. We expanded our form of governance, where kingdoms and kings and queens and emperors as a source of power began to become less and less and less, and then government started taking over as the power base. Then our economy expands and we get land, labor, but now we have capital, because capital's needed to invest in buying all of these machines or research and development, opening up factories and investing in housing and what have you. And out of that, we then had the birth of the new banking system and the stock market. So again, our economy has expanded to include the change that was happening. Now, in the information age, with the computerization, digitization of everything, we're right at the brink of coming into that age. So we haven't seen yet the expansion of governance. And if you have a look at the change precursors, you can see people are asking more and more for a more people-orientated democracy. So over the next few decades, as that drive continues, we will start to see a more participatory democracy, I believe. That is one of my predictions. So now in the information age, we've expanded the economy base, land, labor, capital, and information, because information is now part of our economy. But what we haven't done is expanded the monetary system, or the way that currency flows, as we've done with every age change. And that is precisely why we have a prolonged, ongoing recession or economic crisis, where governments are having to, raise the debt ceiling instead of, raising the production level, which is kind of the obvious thing to do in the age of information. But anyway, if I ruled the world, right? If you and I ruled the world, it'd be very different. But anyway, so we haven't made that expansion yet. We're in the process of making that expansion. And this is where it does get exciting, because this is where the opportunities for entrepreneurship and again, if you're looking for a job for working in an entrepreneurial company that's forging ahead with the new expansion that's going to be taking place. So what happens in each and every one of these age shifts is expansion, not contraction. And this is why, another reason why leaders are failing to come up with really good solutions right now, and it's up to you and me to apply solutions, and that is because they're looking at contracting. They talk about, contracting spending or taking spending out of the budget here, and it's all about contraction and still flogging the industrial model, and it's not working. And the more they do that, the less it will work, and then the less efficient they will become, the more they will lose the trust of the people, and the more the people will demand a participatory democracy, and that's going to give rise to the expansion and governance. That's all going to be happening in the next 50 years. So many of you here with me are going to be living through that. Quantum leaps also happen in production efficiency. And that's a really key here. I'm going to be talking about my predictions in anything to do with production efficiency and efficiency in general coming up. Each age shift has come with tremendous change. I mean, you just look at the change that's happened in our lives since Facebook, or the change since the internet, or the change since the transistor radio, and that change is going to continue. So as I mentioned before, that from agriculture to industry, the job market went from primarily working and labouring on the land into the cities and into industry, and we became more urbanized. And because of that, there was a huge explosion for a need of housing and clothing and mechanics, and education also exploded. The current governance system was sidelined and new governance was born in governments. Children were out there working, families were separated, massive social upheaval during the time of the Industrial Revolution until we caught up, until we changed our structures and our systems to catch up with the change, and then families began to be more reunited, the middle class started to occur, and children started coming out of work and into school. So education was also something that grew during that time as well. So let me recap. What changed in the shift from one age to another was the monetary system. It was restructured. We got banking and we got the stock market. Governance was restructured. The job market was restructured. Society was restructured. Spiritual thought freed up, because up until that moment in the developing world, it was primarily dominated by the Roman Catholic Church, even in parts of the Middle East. And then that started freeing up, and so all sorts of different spiritual thoughts and ancient texts began to emerge, and that freed up thinking, it freed up education, and therefore there was an explosion in education choices. People had a huge variety of choice in education. They could educate themselves on the mechanics of something, and in entrepreneurship, and philosophies of different, everything exploded here. And because what we were seeing was this continuing expansion. What people were living through during this time was the law of expansion. Everything was expanding. So from industry to information, which is we're on the brink of that now, here's the key. Preceding every single age shift has been one revolution, but the information age has had several revolutions. First of all, the electronic revolution with the advent of the transistor radio, then the microchip, which led to the digital revolution, and then the internet, which then led to the information revolution. We are going through a governance revolution around the world, with the birth of the Middle Eastern Spring, and with the Occupy movement, with WikiLeaks, and this whole thing that's going on right now about spying on our friends as well as spying on our so-called enemies. These are all things that are change precursors that are showing us we're heading into a governance revolution. And that's going to lead to a social revolution, and I believe also that we're going to see a financial revolution within the next 7 to 10 years. I know that for a fact because I know a number of my clients who are in the banking industry that are already seeing that and making changes to be able to adjust for when that happens. That's a lot of revolutions. That is a revolutionary time that most of us have been living through these past few decades since the 60s. And it's going to continue. So what you're going to see happening, which has already begun to happen as we shift into this information age, we've come out of the information revolution, and the age is where things solidify and things restructure. That restructuring hasn't taken place in a large form yet. It is about to, though, because it has to accommodate this huge shift that's happening. From industry to information, then we will be seeing a monetary system restructuring, a governance system restructuring, the job market restructuring. And for those of you who used to be in high-paid jobs or high-paid industries, you'll know that some of those salaries are now gone down as much as a third. And I've got a couple of friends of mine who are in the IT industry, and they used to be earning 300 grand. Right? And now they're looking at jobs at around 120 grand, which is still quite a lot of money, but those big salaries, they're starting to come down. There's this conflation that is occurring in the high-end job market, and that's happening in mining as well. Another friend of mine used to be an environmentalist for the mining industry, and again, she was on a really high salary, and now those salaries are coming smaller and smaller. The job market is restructuring. And then that is meaning society is restructuring. I mean, already, just as the change from agriculture to industry, families were being split up, I know of many clients coming to me where their husband or their wife is living overseas, working overseas, and commuting back home, or they're having to live apart for a while in a different state, even a different country sometimes, because they've had to for economic reasons. So society is restructuring. We're also seeing that, with the huge growth in countries adopting same-sex marriages, and we're starting to question, what is the family, what is marriage. This is all part of a restructuring that is going on. spiritual thought is going quantum. We had the advent of quantum physics, and now we've got a lot of creation quantum physicists coming out talking about their discoveries and how we were created, how the world was created, and it's challenging some ideas, and it's bringing the whole debate of creation versus evolution together, and we're discovering, so many things about ourselves, and there's an enormous explosion in the different spiritual thought that we can have choices to study and to become involved in, and there's also an explosion in education choices happening yet again, and it's going to increase even more. Now, on the right hand side of this slide, I want you to consider these numbers here. Natural economics was around about 100,000 years. Agricultural economics, it was around about 10,000 years. The industrial economics, by the time the industrial model of economics came in, it's just over 100 years. Now, the information economics, how many years do you think that is? We haven't even come into the restructuring of our economy to include information yet. When it comes in, how long do you think it's going to last? Can you see how successively there's been a zero dropped? But in the case of, from agriculture to industry, 2 zeros were dropped. So, how many years have we got? Not a lot. And so I'm letting you know we've got massive change that's going to continue to occur, and in our lifetime it's quite feasible that we're going to jump from one age to another super quick, right? So you do need to get ready, otherwise you will end up in the unemployment line or the bankruptcy line. And I'm not saying that to scaremonger you, I'm saying that to encourage you to get excited about all of the different education choices that are out there for you into this new world where all the wealth and the prosperity and the excitement is, because it's a much more exciting world than the industrial age, which was an age of exploitation. So, good segue into where do you fit in? Do you fit into the tent city that's happening? Do you fit into getting left behind? Do you fit into the unemployment line? Or are you fitting into the prosperity that's happening? Because what we're being asked to do here is to change or become extinct. Right? It's as simple as that. Just as in the agricultural shift to the industrial age, ways of living became extinct, different jobs became extinct, same thing is happening here, and that means we need to, all of us, re-educate ourselves, get familiar with what's going on, and that is a great thing because we're here to expand. That's our soul's purpose. Education is a method of expansion. And so, I'm really encouraging everybody to do your research and get out there and get re-educated. And I don't necessarily mean going back to university because they're a bit behind the times in some areas. But certainly, there are a lot of different options in education these days. One of the things I teach my Mission Blueprint clients and participants is that your soul has a plan, and it's in your mission blueprint on what that plan is and how it's going to help you come into this new world without being made extinct, where you get to do what you love and where you get to prosper. And this is one of the reasons why there's a huge explosion right now in people teaching about life purpose and people seeking what their life purpose is, where life has greater meaning. It's purposeful. It's part of this evolutionary shift and the societal restructuring that's going on. Your mission blueprint lets you know, it gives you the elements of what you can be doing so you're not made redundant. It's also the plan. If you've just done my latest free training series, the 7 steps to clarify your purpose and best path to prosperity, you'll know that your mission blueprint, I believe, is how humanity is going to be expanding into and changing the world into something a lot more positive. And we're living through this law of expansion right now. That's your mission blueprint. Your soul does have a plan. It does not plan for you to get left behind. So here are the keys to living in evolutionary times of great change. You're going to need to become a happy learner. This attitude, this mindset of I'll wait until something changes and then I'm going to be able to get my old job back, that is a dinosaur mindset. We have to become happy learners and be willing to learn all of the new things that are happening so we don't get left behind, because you think we've gone through a lot of change and you think change is happening fast now. You wait till the next few years where it's just going to start changing like instantaneously like that as we start coming into the new age and prepare for the next age that's behind that. So we need to be remaining open and avoiding brain freeze. Oh, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Go get educated if you don't know what to do. Do some research. Go to Google. Get on YouTube. Mastering your emotions, not getting caught up in the depression or the fear of what's going on. Just staying in that positive state of mind and looking at all of the great things that are happening. Making no excuses. We can't make excuses anymore because what we focus on increases. This is what we're learning in quantum science. Keeping up our education, increasing our network, because your network is your net worth, right? So make sure that you're around really positive people that are helping you learn about these changes. You know, spend time with talent. Cultivating good relationships. We're in a relationship economy, aren't we? With the advent of social media. So if you don't know how to relate well, that would probably be the first education course I'd recommend that you do. How to relate well and how to communicate properly. This is a relationship economy. That's absolutely important. And this is one of the reasons why, you know, women are really thriving right now in their businesses, because they've got this part mastered, right? They've been raising children and focused on relationships for centuries, that this is something that's kind of more natural. And you're seeing, particularly in America and Australia, more and more and more, the women are earning more, and because the new economy is geared more to people that are great communicators and good at relationships. And that doesn't mean to say that men can't also be there. It just means that if you're not naturally good at communication and relationships, now's the time to get good at it. So what are the opportunities? Well, the opportunities are obviously going to be in every area that is going to be going through expansion. We're expanding the monetary system. We'll be expanding governance before long. And by expanding governance, I don't mean we're going to be expanding regulators or expanding the size of government. I mean we're expanding our concept of governance to include a more people participatory democracy. And what's that going to need? That's going to need people, it's going to need educators, consultants, it's going to need machinery, it's going to need systems, everything that goes with expansion. It's the same with the expansion in the job market. You know, if you're in human resources, you're going to really need to want to do some research in the areas of growth here and how you can grow, you know, what you're doing within, and instead of waiting for, you know, industries that you've been working in that are going to become dinosaurs coming back into fruition. You've got to really start expanding your reach. Same with expansion in society. There's a population explosion going on, and that's another thing that's happened. In every great age shift, there has been an expansion of population. It's exploded. We've had huge population explosion from the nomadic lifestyle to the agricultural lifestyle, and then we had another explosion when we went into the industrial age. We are going through another explosion right now. Let me have you get to grips with that. I'm going to go over to the world clock, so just give me a moment. So I want you to have a look right in the middle under the stats column here of this website, down where it's got births this year, deaths this year. See, the births are at over 107 million, and below the deaths are only at 30 million. Now have a look at how fast spirits, souls are coming into this world. Look at how fast that's going, and look at how slow the death rate is. Right? This is just get to grips with what world we're going to be living in. Right? So I've done a lot of talking about population explosion and how we don't need to control this, because there's a bigger picture. These are souls that are coming in to a time where they're going to be driving us into a totally new era and yet another great age change, and they're all coming and wanting to be a part of that. And so they're all going to need to be fed, educated, energy is going to be needed, housing is going to be needed. So our systems will be forced to change to accommodate this great big huge explosion. And I know that there are people who believe we need to control the population and cull it, and they're actively, purporting these kind of methods. But that's what happened during the industrial age as well. There were people that saying, "Oh, we've got to control the population," and they failed. They were very unsuccessful at that. It did not happen. So, and you'll see that this is going to happen again. So we are going to be forced, and I think that's probably what the purpose of this expansion is. It's forcing us to change our systems and change the way we do things so that we can accommodate a larger population and everybody can prosper. So with all of these new souls wanting to be born and this new expansion in every area, we're also seeing tremendous strides in quantum physics and their discoveries and scientific discovery in the quantum field, not in the Newtonian physics field. There's going to be yet another explosion of spiritual thought and freedom, and then that'll lead to an explosion even more in education choices. We are in a time of mass expansion. The law of expansion is working through us and through our society. So let me talk a little bit about my predictions then, because here's where you get to look at the sign of the times, that there's change ahead. There are new opportunities being born, which means we need to educate ourselves about those opportunities and prepare ourselves to prosper in those areas that are growing and not hold on to the areas that are becoming extinct. So in 2009 and 2010, I started making predictions about what I saw were the new areas of growth, and one of those areas were consulting mentors and coaches. And if you're a member of my In Full Flight program, you'll know that in the Creating Abundance in the New Economy course, I talked about how that we're going to see a similar revolution happen with mentors and coaches that we did with psychologists and psychiatrists in the 60s, 70s. When that explosion in psychological thought happened, everybody had a psychologist or everybody had a counselor that they would go to get their head sorted. And what I predicted back then that would happen is that we would all start taking mentors and coaches or consultants, and that would be kind of like our new psychologists. These are the people who know what's going on in the future, who've educated themselves, who are visionaries, and they've got systems and solutions that can help people make the transition from the old world into the new world smoothly and harmoniously without getting caught in the edges. And just recently, there's actually been quite a lot of people coming out and talking about consulting and being the next big explosion industry. There are already, millions of dollars being spent in this industry. So I predict that that's only going to grow. It's like in the olden days when everybody had a counselor or a psychologist that they went to see. I would say that just about everybody's going to have a mentor and coach, and if they're not paying for a mentor and coach, they're certainly getting mentored and coaching from YouTube. I mean, how many of you go onto YouTube to get coached on how to cook this recipe or how to put this together, or like every time you want to do something, how do I do that? We all either go to YouTube or Google and we get mentored and coached by somebody who's already done it, right? And there are people that have monetized that. I'm one of them, and there are more. You might be one of them too, and there are more of that you're going to see exploding, especially as there are more people that we can educate now. And that leads me to the next prediction that I made. I made the prediction that a lot of old school structures were going to come down in favor of more remote education. That has been happening for quite some time, and just last year the first solar powered school opened. And now, that means that people in rural areas that weren't able to travel to get to their school can now get educated from home. Technology's helping with that. So there's going to be a lot more remote education. So if you're a teacher in a classroom hoping to hang on to your job, I highly recommend you start getting familiar with teaching technology and teaching online and becoming more entrepreneurial in your teaching, because we will see a shrinkage of teachers in the old system, but we'll see an explosion of teachers in the new system. Right now there are online universities. There's also Harvard University and I think Cambridge University. Many universities that are putting all of their lectures and notes online for anybody to join and get educated and have that form of Ivy League type education. They don't necessarily get the qualification, but they're getting the education. One of the change precursors for this was the huge explosion and popularity of the reality TV shows. I mean, there are so many more reality TV shows now than just Survivor. And why are people interested in that? They're interested in that because it's everyday people going through everyday problems and overcoming them. And it's kind of like an educative process, like for a lot of people watching those reality TV shows. And you know, some of them are inspiring and others of them cater to the lowest common denominator of humanity. But that's the nature of our polarity universe, isn't it? And this is a clue, this is a key. If you're looking to monetize your mission and you're in the field of education or delivering information and consulting, this is where you can have huge confidence. It's like people aren't always going to the celebrity educators these days. They go to YouTube for the everyday average person who's had a challenge, overcome it, solved it, and is teaching you how to solve it. You know, you have a look at a lot of people in my industry are having to come off the pedestal in this relationship economy and not remove themselves from the audience. They're having to speak to their audience at the ground level and involve relationships with them, because that's where we're being driven to just all come down onto this equal platform where each and every one of us is unique and has a gift to give and to offer, you know, rather than having this hierarchy of only people at the top know what they're talking about and only those people can educate. I mean, everybody's becoming an educator in today's information age. You know, we're going into a governance revolution. In fact, I would hesitate to say with the Middle East Spring, the Occupy movement, and now the Blockupy movement that started in Germany, this whole surveillance nonsense that's going on in the world news today, these are all precursors that we're going to start heading into massive revolution. And I hope it's a peaceful revolution. You know, I hope it's a very intellectual one which is what happened in the industrial age, where we went from monarchies to governance and everybody just started talking about becoming more efficient in the way we governed, and then, you know, we transition into a better system of governance and a better system of democracy. I predicted before WikiLeaks got popular that there would start to be a number of whistleblowers come out and tell us things that would revolutionize the way we think about our government and revolutionize the way we think about ourselves as well. So since I made that prediction, WikiLeaks has been thrown into the news a lot more often, and then there are all of these CIA whistleblowers coming out saying some phenomenal things. You might just want to Google that if you want to know what I'm talking about. There are World Bank whistleblowers, surveillance whistleblowers. There are whistleblowers in the pharmaceutical industry. They are coming from all walks of life to tell us about what's been going on, and that's raising our awareness to go, well, is that actually the kind of society we want to live in, and do we want that to continue? That's going to create change. And my predictions are, like I've already predicted, there's huge whistleblowers happening, and that's happened. And I would say that that's going to continue for the next 5 years. These whistleblowers are change agents that are driving so much of the change that's going to be happening. I made a prediction. I don't think this has come true yet, but I made a prediction back in 2010 that the people that would invent fast ways of relieving stress and products that relieve stress were going to become the next millionaires overnight, the next overnight millionaires. Especially people who would give us the office chair that made us lose weight. Because that, like, the world's putting on weight and we've become more sedentary in this information age. We're in front of the computers a lot more often. Our jobs are more sedentary. So the person that invents the stress relieving, massaging, weight reduction office chair, that could be you, I think is going to become the next overnight millionaire like Amazon. But seriously, what's just happened in the last year is this whole idea of work-life balance in the consulting industry that's starting to come out. You're starting to see a lot of growth in that area. I think that the day spa will come back into popularity as well. Weekends away, where stress reduction, because of this overwhelm of information and overwhelm of technology and overwhelm of change, it does start to take a toll on us. That is going to necessitate that, you know, we turn to stress releasing products and different gadgets and gizmos and programs that are very fast in helping us come back to our center so that we can cope. Otherwise, you know, we'll all end up going off the deep end, and we don't want to see that happen. So also I made a prediction that there was going to be a huge human renaissance, and I'm seeing this in a number of artists that I've got coming to me. I'm seeing, and as I'm looking into their futures and looking at what their personal missions are, there is going to be an explosion of multimedia art that's already begun to happen. Also, I think we're going to understand, because of the huge stresses of the information age, we're going to understand the role that art and creative people play in our society and how important it is, how extremely important it is to stress relief. And so I think the arts and the entertainment industries will all see their explosion, especially if they're geared towards relieving stress fast instead of pumping up the adrenaline like the violent and adventure movies do. The opposite is so. It's like we're going to want to have moments of respite, and I think the art and entertainment industry is a huge growth area that we will begin to see some really fantastic things come out of. And I think we'll value our artists more. I made a prediction also, and this hasn't happened yet, I made a prediction that as we advance into our scientific discoveries, there will be some kind of a breakthrough in understanding the role that art, entertainment and creativity plays on our brain and the function of our brain, as well as, you know, like a lot of us already know that it does help us with our learning. But this will become mainstream idea, and so art then will become a really important factor in the education system as well. That's my prediction, and we'll see how that pans out. You know, with all of these explosions and the stress that I was talking about, the health and well-being industry has been a really huge growth industry, especially the alternative health and wellness, whether it's alternative lifestyles, you know, getting fit, getting healthy, eating healthy, all of that kind of thing. That is now a multi-billion-dollar industry, and that was predicted to become the next billion-dollar industry. That has happened. What I predict is that we're going to need to have speed. We're going to need to get speed into our health and wellness, and already we've got nanonutrients coming out which speed up the process of absorption. We've got fitness, you know, the 7-minute workout, which is a fitness program that gets you into shape super fast. There are other workouts that are shorter in time. So this idea of bringing speed into health and wellness will become a really growth area as well. So if you've got inventions that are in that area, or this is an area or an industry you want to get involved in, you want to be thinking about speed. How can I speed up people's results? How can I get them to their goals faster? Because that's where the growth in that industry is. So I predict that we're going to see more and more speed-orientated products and services coming out. I predicted there was going to be an explosion in people seeking purposeful work. Like in the prolonged global financial crisis, people started turning away from money and going, you know, there's more important things in life than money. You know, money is a tool and it's great, and I think we should all have more than enough so that we're in the experience of the abundance of our universe. But at the same time, the values in the information age are different from the values in the industrial age. In the industrial age, the values were exploitation for profit, regardless of the cost. And now with information on what cost we're actually paying because of that exploitation, we're shifting our value system. So we're going to see an explosion of social entrepreneurship. I predicted that we would start wanting to move into making more money by making a bigger difference several years ago, before social entrepreneurship was even a word. Now, it's not only a word, it's an explosive industry. 80% of millennials going into business set up a social entrepreneur business. That is a huge amount. They're setting up to be in business, to create a profit, to make a difference and create social change. That is huge. That's going to grow. Like if you're looking for a job and you're in government or education, I highly recommend you start looking at social entrepreneur companies for jobs because that's where the growth is. Now, with all of this overwhelm, systems and efficiency are becoming more important. So I predict that anybody that has the ability to help people systematize to become more efficient, or have systems of products that help people become more efficient, or mentor or consult about systems and efficiency, this is a huge growth area for people like you. Or if it's something you want to get into, it's definitely something you want to research, because that is going to be a huge growth area, I predict. Sustainability, well, this isn't a prediction that's too hard to imagine. You have a look at the World Clock website, the sheer number of souls that are incarnating right now, the population explosion that's going on, who all need housing and energy and food, and that means we need to change our systems. And this is where sustainability, I believe, will start becoming more mainstream. Governments will have to adapt. I think we're going to have a permaculture revolution before too long. I think we're going to have an energy revolution before too long. And I also think we're going to have a housing revolution before too long. We are changing systems and structures, and we need to revolutionize the way we do things in this area to accommodate the information age and the sheer volume of souls that are being incarnated right now, because we can't have a great big huge amount of people living in poverty. It's not needed. There's an abundance universe. It's expanding. That abundance is expanding. There is no need for lack here at all. And that's the value change that happens in the information age. We shift from a lack consciousness to an abundant consciousness. Where there's a will, there's a way, there's an answer without having to contract. We can work with the law of expansion to expand, and therefore, we're never in a situation where we're redundant or poor. So there you have it. Those are my predictions for the growth areas for you to be looking in, either to be starting up your business in, or to getting educated in, or to be looking for a job in. And for those of you watching the video, you might want to screenshot this so that you've got those predictions sitting there for you when you're thinking about monetizing, which is what I'm going to go to next. The keys to monetizing your mission. Well, for those of you who've just recently come through my training, 7 Steps to Clarify Your Purpose and Best Path to Prosperity, you'll know that step number 2 in those 7 steps is to locate your mission, message, mojo, and niche. So now what we're doing is we're taking your mission, your message, your mojo, which will have also shaken loose what your niche is. We're going to take your soul's primary expression modalities. These are methods of expression that your soul's incarnated to expand through. That gives us the direction of your monetization. We've just familiarized ourselves with the sign of the times. We know we're in revolutionary times of change. And now we monetize. And how we do that is, first of all, we've got to research. If things are changing and we don't know what those changes are going to be, then we need to be researching with visionaries like either myself or Arthur Brock, many other visionaries out there who are making predictions or who are reading change precursors and giving us clues as to where we're headed. We need to know about that, because just like in the industrial age, when we didn't know the motor car was coming along, somebody did, right? So if the people who were manufacturing buggy whips and buggies were doing their research, they would know that their business was about to become extinct, and they wouldn't have gone bankrupt and they wouldn't have got caught up, because they could have adapted and changed and then started developing new products for the new industries that were being born. Super important. You have to be researching, keeping up on mailing lists of certain visionaries or people that keep you abreast. And I know that we all get a lot of email, but I don't unsubscribe from anybody's emails these days. I keep them all in a folder. I read their headings, and so because I want to keep up, I don't want to be left behind. I want to know what's going on, and I don't read all of them word for word, but I get the gist of what's going on, and that keeps me updated. You want to be working with my formula to create something that will make the world awesome, which is applying the law of nature to yourself. And again, if you've been to missionblueprintteleseminar.com and signed up for my free training, there's a mentoring session with me helping you through the first step in that journey. And then you want to list all of the ways that you can make money expressing your modalities. So it's really important to know what those soul primary expression modalities are. List all the ways that you can monetize. Create the pathway forward and pinpoint your starting point. We need to know where you're going to start. Otherwise, you're going to get overwhelmed and you'll trip over. So there you have it, my video on observing the sign of the times. And I hope you feel excited, and you should feel excited, because there's a huge amount of freedom coming our way. There's an explosion coming our way of possibilities and choices and opportunities. The world isn't shrinking, even though our media and our governments might like it to. They're called leukocytes, right? People who tried to stop the huge tide of change. They were unsuccessful during the Industrial Revolution. They were unsuccessful during the Agricultural Revolution. They will be unsuccessful during this information revolution going into the information age. That you can't stop the forces of nature. Man is not that powerful. So be of good cheer. We'll move on now to monetizing your mission.